will talk to you.
Hi, Michael. Sorry, we have some problems here with microphone and the camera.
Understand.
Now, okay, now it's everything nice. Are you ready?
I am.
Okay. Have you already tried your slides?
Yeah.
They are okay. Nice.
Here I am.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have here at the university some people watching, and
Great.
we also have some people at the YouTube watching online.
Great.
And first, I will make a brief introduction, and I will read your bio.
Okay.
And then you have time to talk. Be free to talk 50 minutes. And after we can open to some discussion.
Yes. How many minutes? 50?
Yeah.
Great.
50.
I'll since we're starting a little late, I'll cut it. I'll try to cut it down a little bit.
Okay. Do you need me to be aware of the time?
I'll start a timer. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
there's just one thing I want to check, and could you let's see? Let's try this. Let's do it this way. I just want to. I'm going to show a video. I just want to make sure that I can share the screen.
Right.
So I couldn't do that before. Share. Can you see that?
Not yet. Léo. Acho que ele abriu o vídeo.
Could you see that?
Now I think yes. Yes, we can hear and see.
Is it too loud?
No, we can control here. It's okay.
Great. Okay.
So nice. Michael, let me ask, for the questions, you understand Portuguese?
No, not very.
No. Okay. So if someone has some question in Portuguese, we can translate.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, nice. So let's begin. We are just trying attention here. Okay, let's go. Olá, boa tarde a todas e todos. Bem-vindos e bem-vindas a mais uma conferência do primeiro Encontro Brasileiro de Pesquisa Artística. Nessa tarde, nós temos aqui o professor Michael McDonald, que vai nos apresentar a palestra CineWorlding, mise-en-sense, Cinematic Research Creation, CineWorlding. Eu vou ler aqui um breve resumo, né, da biografia do professor Michael. Vamos lá. Apesar de ter barba, o professor McDonald não é um acadêmico de terno de tweed, mas a sua paixão pelo cinema e pela música levou-o para as ruas, mostrando a vida difícil dos artistas que tentam conquistar fãs um concerto de cada vez. Nas palavras da rádio CKUA de Alberta. Michael McDonald é um premiado cine-etnomusicólogo, professor associado de música na Faculdade de Belas Artes e Comunicações da Universidade MacEwan, em Edmonton, Alberta, Canadá. O seu trabalho de investigação e criação cinematográfica em curso investiga a interface da etnografia musical e da produção cinematográfica, tal como documentado em CineWorlding Scenes of Cinematic Research Creation, publicado pela Bloomsbury Press em 2023. Os filmes de McDonald foram exibidos em mais de 80 festivais de cinema, tendo ganho prêmios de documentário e de cinema experimental. Tem publicado amplamente sobre estudos musicais, cultura juvenil, teoria cine-etnográfica e cine-etnomusicológica, com capítulos de livros incluídos em manuais influentes. É autor de Playing for Change, de 2016, Remixing Life Hack in Hip Hop, de 2016, e coeditor de A History of Progressive Music and Youth Culture, de 2020. Michael é membro do Comitê de Programação da KISMIF, uma conferência internacional sobre música e cultura do It Yourself, membro do Comitê Científico da Combart, membro ativo do Grupo de Estudos de Etnomusicologia Audiovisual do Conselho Internacional de Música Tradicional, afiliado à Unesco, e cofundador da Justice for Real Media. Então, agora com vocês, o professor Michael McDonald vai nos apresentar a palestra e depois teremos um tempo para discussão. So, Michael, now you can start. Thank you very much for your participation.
Thanks, Bibiana. Thanks for hosting me and inviting me to share what I've been working on with you. I'd like to start by saying how exciting it is to be involved in the Congress of Research Creation. It's in Brazil. It's fantastic, having been involved with CISMIF at University of Porto for a number of years and talking about research creation there. It was very exciting to connect with Bibiana and others at Todas as Artes this year to hear about what's happening in research creation in Brazil. And I promised Bibiana and others that I would work very hard on learning Portuguese so that I can share my ideas with you in Portuguese, and we'll say hopefully next year I'll be able to at least understand questions. So we'll go bit by bit. Since everybody's going to be talking about research creation, it's probably unnecessary for me to begin with a definition of research creation, so I'm not going to. Instead, what I'm going to do is jump directly into the work that I've been doing in cinematic research creation. And over the course of the presentation, I think, or I hope, what I'm trying to do in cinematic research creation is going to become clearer, and we can have an interesting conversation about it. The first thing that I want to make clear, or as clear as I can, because I don't really completely understand what I mean by this yet, is that I don't make films, which is perhaps very strange for a filmmaker that has screened films in more than 80 international film festivals. And I have film festival awards and all of those things. And I write about filmmaking, I do all of the, from the camera work to the editing to the post-production and screening of the films. And to everybody, they appear to be films. But at a conference 8 or 9 years ago, when I was making a film with a composer, when I was introducing the film at the conference, I started by saying, this is not a film. And where that comes from is really interesting. It's more of a feeling that I'm trying to work towards. And that idea of a feeling of something that you are working towards, like moving towards a horizon of a concept, is a process that is going to come back over and over again in the course of the presentation. So even though I'm going to show you one of my films, I'm going to show you a music video, I want you at the very beginning to resist seeing it as a music video. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means. So what the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a music video, and then I'm going to use that as the starting point for us. Here we go.
Never enough. Give me a sign. Put your hands in mine. I was never enough. Oh, never enough. I'm not broken. I'm just caught up in something real. Oh, I'm in between. I'm not broken. I'm just trying to find a way to my feet. Oh, I'm in between. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Oh, save me, save me, save me. I feel like I've run out of time. Oh, chasing, chasing, chasing. Was I blind? Your shadow claimed my light. I was never enough. Oh, never enough. Give me a sign. Look into my eyes. I was never enough. Oh, never enough. I'm not broken. I'm just caught up in something real. Oh, I'm in between. I'm not broken. I'm just trying to find a way to my feet. Oh, I'm in between. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Oh, save me, save me, save me. I feel like I've run out of time. Oh, chasing, chasing, chasing. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Oh, save me, save me, save me. I feel like I've run out of time. Oh, chasing, chasing, chasing you. Oh, I've been chasing you. I've been chasing you. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Oh, save me, save me, save me. I feel like I've run out of time. Oh, chasing, chasing, chasing. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Oh, save me, save me, save me. I feel like I've run out of time. Oh, chasing, chasing, chasing you. Oh, I've been chasing you. I've been chasing you. What more could I do? I'm done chasing you.
So Margot, the artist name is Margot. The song's called In Between. Instead of thinking about it in terms of a music video, in terms of cinema, I want to propose that we could think of it in terms of a diagram. What I'm calling diagrammatic audio vision, or CineWorlding. And for those of you who are into Deleuze and Guattari, you'll be perhaps familiar with the work on the diagram. One of the things that struck me about thinking in terms of a diagram and thinking in terms of what Deleuze proposes as a diagram is that the possibilities of what a diagram can do don't have to be nailed down to a still image. And in cinematic research creation, perhaps the job of the artist researcher can be in one part of it, can be to explore what the diagram can do. So cinematic research creation, from Aaron Manning's perspective, asks more than what is art. and it begins to explore artfulness as a way. And for Manning, drawing on the work of Harney and Moten, a way is it's not just a technique, but you can think of it in terms of techniques of living. You can think of it in terms of techniques, which is what I explore in CineWorlding. You can think of it as artfulness beyond the object. It's artfulness as process and not art as an object. And when we start exploring that, we begin to pose old questions anew, asking fundamental questions about what thinking is. So in CineWorlding, I'm interested in exploring what does it mean to think and feel, or to think-feel, with cinematic technology, a camera, editor, projection. And how does this thinking, feeling work as a transversal operation, worlding with four ecologies? So in CineWorlding, and I'm not going to talk much about this in the presentation, we can talk about it more maybe in the Q&A, but across CineWorlding, I explore the operations between the conceptual, psychic, social, technological, and environmental ecologies, thinking about thinking, feeling as an ecological operator, but thinking ecology way beyond just about trees and the built environment, which would be the environmental ecology. But how does the technological ecology entwine with the social, conceptual, psychic, and environmental ecologies? The diagramming then is thinking about how these processes, these forces of transversal operation happen between these four ecologies. So the process then of making cinema then becomes a way of thinking about the diagrammatic operation of the cinema camera and all of the technical equipment connected to it, and how those actualize the virtualities that are present in a worlding. In this particular example of the Margot video, Margot and I are interested in using cinema technology to produce a Margot that is not reducible to a single single image. So in this slide looks cut off on my side. Diagrammatic audio vision. This is a quote from my CineWorlding book. What does it mean to think non-representational? We're non-representationally. So thinking about not making a documentary about Margot, but instead thinking about how Margot can be diagrammed. So in this case, Margot is not reducible to any of the representations that were created. So Margot is not one authentic representation of Margot in a sea of different Margots, or a sea of different, whether it's the monster or the cabaret singer or the person that enters the basement. Instead, Margot is all of them operating through each other. And what I'm interested here is the threshold crossing from the realm of images to the realm of bodies and back. For instance, the process of making this music video had Margot and I sitting down. Margot gave me the song. I went and listened to the song and thought about what was happening in the song. When I came back to Margot, I said, it feels to me that there are multiple Margots happening in this time space all at the same time, and that they're working through each other. And it's the process of working through each other that can be visualized in using the music video form, diagrams the complexity or the multiplicity of Margot. I'm going to skip over this pretty quickly, and this is something that I can send the slides to Bibiana, and you can dig into them a little more. But I'm interested in here on what CineWorlding does, if we can break it out. And I think what this slide does, most importantly, is it gets us to the sixth box. And in the sixth box, it has a collection of terms: force, abstract machine, worlding, mise-en-sense, the plane of material and plane of composition, event, sign, and sense. And it's this event, sign, I want to explore a little bit more deeply in this presentation, because we're used to thinking, I think, about signs in a very often in a very limited way, often influenced by Saussure, by thinking about the single, the single image and the single act of interpretation. But Deleuze, in his cinema books, what he does is he grabs onto C.S. Peirce, and he kind of reads Peirce through Bergson. So he thinks about signs and duration. And that's something that I think becomes really important for people that are doing, that are working in process. What happens, quite interestingly, I think, for me as an ethnomusicologist, is that while I'm making the claim that I'm not making a film for a very specific reason, it's because as soon as I begin to think cinema, it provides me, whether I like it or not, it kind of provides me with a ground for audio vision. It says that what I'm doing is making a shot, and this is what a shot is. In very much the same way, for those of you who study music, as soon as we begin to think music, it's often very difficult to not think notes. But as an ethnomusicologist, I know very well that there are many cultural expressions of music that don't have notes as a ground. And that the problem in ethnomusicology for decades has been how to think about musical systems without importing Western art music as its ground. And one way, I think, to try to think beyond the ground that cinema studies or the ground that music studies necessarily provides is to begin to think a little bit about. This is a quote from David Laprejade: groundlessness, the earth, and multiplicities constitute the plane with which we must begin, or which we must reach, even if it is inevitably presupposed. He admits we still know very little of what this entails. Accordingly, there are less claims than expressions. And I think the idea of thinking about claims and expressions as kind of intertwined with each other is really important. And he goes on to say, and this is all one paragraph, I just broke it out in this slide so that we can think about these claims individually. What makes them necessarily aberrant, and this is the title of his book, thinking about Deleuze and aberrant thinking. What makes them necessarily aberrant is precisely their relationship with the groundlessness that they raise to the surface, precisely that which they express of their groundlessness. So let me jump in a little bit what this attempt at groundlessness does for me. As soon as I felt that I was not making films, and I said to myself and to an audience, this is not a film, it suddenly shook the foundations for thinking about what cinema does for me. And I think if I can identify or locate a place where I stopped being an ethnomusicologist and I started being an artist researcher, started working in cinematic research creation and not music studies, was precisely at the moment when I accepted the possible groundlessness of the work that I'm that I'm trying to do. So the groundlessness actually makes, I think, being an artist researcher, it perhaps gives it a form, it gives it an orientation. We no longer need to import research methods and artistic practices into research creation. We can use research creation as a place to generate new ways of thinking about music, new ways of thinking about cinema, new ways of thinking about whatever it is that you are particularly interested in. So in order to do this, I think we have to make space for the thinking feeling of durational signs beyond the critic. And I just tossed this green light on this slide because this was the stop sign was in grad school, my introduction to semiotics. Sign means stop, and this means this, and this means this, and this means this. And as a critic, we look at signs and we say what they mean. I think becoming an artist researcher moves in a different direction from the critic. So I think I kind of identifying the way, the kind of the history of being a cultural critic and how that it's been used in cultural studies is something that I'm personally not comfortable bringing into research creation as it develops. I think being an artist researcher does not need to include the judgment of being a critic. I think being an artist researcher does something else. In this quote from Deleuze, I want to look at the this bolded section, particularly the first 4 words. Sense is the membrane. I want to think about that membrane, and I want to think about the membrane in terms of the perhaps a screen or an eyepiece or your screen on your phone or whatever as the membrane in which sense operates. And this gets us into thinking about cinematic research creation and artfulness as process. So here's someone making a mise-en-scene. So in cinema, the mise-en-scene is the space that occupies the screen. It's the space where all of the action is going to occur. It's the lights, it's the furniture, it's the people, it's the costumes, it's everything. It's everything that happens in the scene, and that's the mise-en-scene. Now, the mise-en-scene is connected to in cinema studies, what's called the shot. Now, the big question for me as an artist researcher, and the question that I get from students whenever I'm thinking about cinema production, the students ask, how do you know when to hit record? That's a very simple question. Very simple. And the first time a student asked me that, I said, wow, that's a great question. What a great question. And then I went to try to answer it. And it turns out that the answer is philosophically extraordinarily complex. How do I know when to hit record? Is it me that hits record? Is it me that starts the recording process? Is it and anybody that makes or has ever made cinema or ever make art, when you begin to dig into it, quite often it feels like it's not you. And I think it feels like it's not you who makes the decisions, because I don't think it is you that makes the decisions. I don't think it's easily separated into the mise-en-scene and the hitting record, which interestingly lines up very clearly and very easily with the subject-object way of thinking about the world, the Kantian organization, the Cartesian coordinates of the subject-object, which is so familiar and so easy to think with, but often doesn't lead us to very interesting things, and often doesn't help us think about what is going on in process. So I rely on the concept of worlding as a starting point. And worlding can simply be defined as a semiotic and material mixture. Now let's think of the event of the mise-en-scene, or the event of hitting record. Let's pretend we are photographers in this case, and our photographic research creation process has led us here. The subject object orientation to this photograph would be talking about its framing, would be talking about its lighting, and the artist could say everything lined up according to what I was looking for, and I hit record. And I hit the photography button, and that's that. Which, from one particular orientation is entirely correct. It satisfies what Deleuze, where Deleuze begins with this idea of the Persian triad, that there's a percept, which is all of the image, everything that's happening in the image, that there's an affect, the kind of bodily movements of correctness, rightness, of geometry, of artfulness. It's whatever those affects are mobilized, and you're moving towards a concept. You're moving towards this is the image that I'm looking for. But when we're reading Deleuze's cinema books, we get a much more complex process-oriented purse, where there is lines of relationship and interrelationship between pastness and the moment of semiosis and the futurity, the percept connected to pastness, concept connected to futurity. There's a much more dynamic process occurring that gives us a starting point for a different interpretation of the image than what I just showed, which we'll get back to in a sec. Deleuze says, something in the world forces us to think. We can call this an event. This something is an object, not of recognition, but a fundamental encounter. So in this case, it's not a subjective view of the world that is happening. The subject and the world is the object. Instead, there's a worlding. There's a being drawn into the unfolding of and coming into form of a particular worlding that's going to exist in the world of images. In this case, as a cinematographer, what is activating this shot, and having made lots of shots like this, is the position of the sun. It's the light. And it's the light as it outlines everything that's happening in the worlding. It's the moment where the light dapples through the trees in a particular way, where street lights move into your bedroom in a particular way. It's that moment of that we could call magic. It's that moment of artfulness that is mobilizing, that is calling this photograph into its actuality. That is not you. That's not you as a subject. That's you as a witness. That's you as a witness in a worlding that you're a part of, and that calls you into action. So when students ask, how do I hit record in cinematic research creation? The answer that I'm forced to give and then need to spend a lot of time working through is that it's not you that hits record. It's the mobilization of a worlding. It's an event of which you are part that mobilizes the virtualities of a moment into the future. David Lampejade says, modes of existence are all ways of occupying space-time. but only if we clarify that each mode creates the time space that it occupies. So creating this time space moves us into thinking about what it means to contribute the livingness of a virtuality. I love this concept from Lapujad. And what he means by it is that there are virtualities existing that are existing all of the time. The degree to which one opens themselves through the technology that they're working with to witness the existence of these virtualities, and then contributes to moving them from a virtuality into an actuality, is the process of he says, and we'll get to it in a sec, he says it's a form of witnessing. It's a form of witnessing the existence of virtualities, and it's contributing to the moving of the virtuality into an actuality. Being on this street, being in the world with a photography camera at this moment, attending to the becoming of this world as it's happening in front of the lens, recognizing the virtualities that could be described as beautiful, and then moving those virtualities into the actuality of the photograph, so that those virtualities can be actualized for other people in the future, I think does something incredibly important for thinking about worldings, thinking about the beauty of the world, thinking about the importance of so many things. This, for me, is the mise-en-sense. It's no longer all of the things that are in front of the camera. The mise-en-sense is the worlding that occurs, that includes the camera body assemblage, the pastness of the artist researcher, the futurity of the image or the film as it moves into the future, the diagrammatic process that draws out the record button. That event is the mobilization of a sense that creates a form of circuit between you and the worlding, and moves a pastness into a future, and begins to pose a lot of really interesting philosophical questions that I think research creation has the potential to contribute to. Lapujad says, the witness is never neutral or impartial. The responsibility falls on the witness to show what she has had the privilege of seeing, feeling, or thinking. This is the person who becomes a creator. At first, a perceiving subject, she becomes a creating subject. But this is because behind the witness, the profile of another persona emerges, and that of the advocate. And the advocate, I think, becomes the concept of advocate in this idea of witnessing becomes something that is not judgmental. It's not, I am judging this to be beautiful. It's the advocate is more like, look at what is beautiful. Look at the possible complexities of the world. And it moves us from this idea of critic to advocate. It moves us into, I think, a new ethical domain. And we begin to think about another way of thinking about research creation from an activist orientation, where, and I hope this doesn't sound too light, because I think the ethical consequences of this, I think, are quite profound, that the artist researcher as witness and advocate for the virtualities of worldings seems to be an incredibly important political project right now. I think as certainly as Brazil has experienced over the last number of years, what we are seeing in the rise of conservatism all over the world, the playing a role in showing the beautiful potentials of multiplicity of other ways of being, of other kinds of worldings, I think is a kind of activist work that artists, researchers can play an important role in. The difference, I think, between artist researchers and artists is that I think we have, for those people who are identifying themselves as artist researchers, I think there's not just the artwork as objects that are being engaged with, but I think that there's a process of thinking that occurs when has increasingly focused on what I call cinema thinking. And the argument that I'm making with cinema thinking is that the technologies of cinema provide us with a new way of thinking, feeling that is as important, as useful, as valuable as writing thinking. And that we have inherited an educational system that's based exclusively on writing thinking. And it seems to me that research creation in all of its modalities can contribute to an expansion of the kinds of ways that we think about thinking. That I don't think thinking needs to be locked down and reduced to only writing. But in order for us to expand that, to move beyond writing as the only evidence for thinking, I think we collectively need to be making deep philosophical dives into the process that we engage with as artist researchers. And that becomes a different form of activism. And I think an activism that can make a significant contribution to life in university and perhaps even the role of university in people's day-to-day lives. And I'm going to stop there. Thank you for your time and attention. And I hope I didn't talk too fast.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful, very nice to hear you talking, very inspiring. Let's see if you have some questions in the YouTube. Alguém aqui quer fazer pergunta? Não? Então eu vou fazer uma pergunta, começar. I will make a question. Now in the last theme that you were talking about, the research creation as something that can expand the ways of thinking about thinking to go beyond the writing only. And how are you dealing with this in the university context there? Because here in Brazil, we have some rules and it's difficult to go. It's difficult to go in other ways. For example, we have some master's and doctoral degrees, and we need to write text and a final thesis or dissertation, and it's difficult to expand this, to try these new ways of thinking about thinking. And how are you dealing with this in universities? And
yeah, that's a really that's a great question, and I don't have a single.
Just a minute, Michael. I will translate to Portuguese what I just asked.
Right.
Eu estou perguntando expandir as maneiras de se pensar sobre o próprio pensamento. Então, de ir além da única maneira que a gente tem na universidade atualmente, que é o conhecimento escrito. Então, né, é tentar entender outras linguagens, mesmo as artísticas, como também como algo que constrói conhecimento. Então, eu perguntei como que eles estão lidando com isso e como que ele está lidando com isso, porque aqui no Brasil a gente ainda tem muitas restrições, né? Então, se faz um mestrado, um doutorado, tem que ter um texto escrito, por mais que seja em arte. Então, é isso que eu perguntei para ele, mais ou menos. Sorry, Michael, thank you.
Yeah, no, it's, you know, I have to learn to speak Portuguese is the answer. I don't have one line of action. I'm doing multiple things simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
So part of it is contributing to the creation of online academic journals that can host audiovisual work. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, the Society for Ethnomusicology just last year founded the Journal for Audiovisual Ethnomusicology. So that what that does is it allows, it gives us a place where our film work can be peer reviewed and published by a disciplinary body. Mm-hmm. What that does is that recognizes recognizes audiovision as or film as a legitimate academic piece of work. So that's really important that in research creation that we find ways of using digital journals that can peer review, that can have peer review and can recognize the value of that work. Mm-hmm. So that's one part of it. The second part is pedagogical. So I'm doing experiments in how to use audiovision in my university classrooms, and then writing about that and publishing about that in a variety of spaces, both in research creation spaces, but also outside of research creation. Presenting to school teachers and thinking about how audiovision can be utilized in the school system to kind of normalize it. I understand that universities are going to be suspicious, mm-hmm. And why wouldn't they be? I mean, the entire education system is built around writing. We go to the beginning of school and we learn to write words, and then we learn to write sentences, and then we learn to write paragraphs, and then we learn to write book reports, and then we learn to write essays, and then we learn to write research essays, and then dissertations. The entire organization of education is built around text. Mm-hmm. So there is part of the process of doing that kind of Foucauldian work, of doing an archaeology of learning and highlighting that we have inherited a system of learning that is text-based. Yeah. But we are currently living in a world that is increasingly based in audiovision. Most people in the world, there are over 5 billion audio-visual enabled devices in people's hands all over the world. And that is very quickly becoming the dominant literacy of humans. And it seems to me that the university may find itself very quickly illiterate in the dominant literacy of our time. Mm-hmm. So making all of these arguments and doing all of these activities at the same time is kind of what I'm doing, and how people in research creation choose to choose to engage in their own areas, I think is one of the things that I find so exciting about the work that you're doing with this Congress, because organizing people together, which we have not been, research creation people have been very much independent and individual, and still very much are. It was very exciting to see your panel at Todas as Artes, to see you all talking about the approaches that you're taking to research creation. So doing that kind of work is also incredibly important. And finally, doing lots of writing. So one of the ironic things I think that I'm beginning to recognize is that we are going to have to write ourselves out of writing. We're going to have to make the arguments in text that that there are ways of thinking that are not textual. And and that's what CineWorlding, this first book is CineWorlding is trying to do. In the next book that I'm hoping to have published in Portuguese, the very first chapter is proposing an alternative term to literacy, that is based in audio vision.
Yeah, that's nice. I think this writing paradigm, this homogeneity of writing, has also something to do with our Eurocentric heritage, and to think beyond the writing, we can think about some decolonial perspectives too. I think this is something important and something that we are always thinking about here in Brazil.
Yeah, you're 100% right.
Let me see. Alguma pergunta? I have one more question about something that you said right now about creating some specific journals to try to do something beyond the writing and to include some audiovisual and other ways of knowledge. When we have these different expressions like visual, audio, we have something that we can have the traditional blind peer review. And here in this event, in the submissions, it wasn't possible to be blind because people people submitted the links of some performance, and we saw the person performing, playing, singing, doing nothing else. And it's impossible to have blind peer review. And to our scientific committee, it was a little bit weird. It was surprising that it wasn't blind peer review. Do you have how do you think about it? Do you have something to say about it?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. We have to make a distinction between a double-blind peer review and a blind peer review process. A double-blind peer review means that neither the writer of the abstract nor the reviewer of the abstract know who each other is. So that's a double-blind peer review. A blind peer review means that the author doesn't know who the reviewers are. It is not out of the ordinary for there to be a scientific process of a single blind peer review. And universities have, particularly in the humanities, have become so used to the double-blind peer review as the only legitimate peer review process that they use it as the gold standard. There is no reason for it to be the gold standard. because universities don't operate themselves using a double-blind peer review process. They use a single-blind peer review process for promotion. Everybody on the promotion committee knows who the applicant is, obviously, but the applicant doesn't know who the committee is. And nobody in the humanities are making the argument that the promotion committee is therefore not legitimate because it's not double blind. I don't think that we need to, I think we can make an argument that having a single blind peer review process is scientifically legitimate.
Yeah. Michael, are you listening?
I'm here, yeah.
Oh, okay. It stopped for a while, but
Oh, okay.
it's okay.
Did you catch the end?
Yes, I think, yes.
Single
Yeah.
blind is okay and scientifically valid.
Okay. Yeah, what we did here in this event was the blind peer single blind, yeah, not double.
Yeah.
But we thought about doing just peer review, the authors knowing who is analyzing and the analyzers knowing who is the author, but it wasn't very well received, so we chose for single peer review.
Yeah.
Single.
Yeah. I love the idea of just peer review where everyone knows
Yeah.
what's going on. It seems to be a very community oriented way of behaving.
Yeah, maybe the next one.
Yeah, well, we do what we can.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Alguma pergunta mais? O que eu perguntei agora foi sobre o processo de revisão da submissão de trabalhos. Normalmente a gente faz trabalhos quando a pessoa submete trabalhos, quem avalia não conhece o autor e o autor não conhece quem avaliou. Só que quando a gente fala de práticas artísticas, é impossível a gente mandar um vídeo de alguém tocando, de alguma peça de teatro, sem que o avaliador veja essa pessoa, né? Então, acaba caindo esse tipo de rigor, né, da revisão. Mais alguma pergunta, algum comentário? Léo quer fazer algum comentário? Well, no? Well, we don't have any more questions. We thank you very much for your talking. It was really inspiring. I think we have many things to think about, and we are waiting for your book to be translated in Portuguese. I really think that it will be nice. And we are maybe in a next event you can come presential here in Brazil.
I would love that.
It would be very nice.
It would be very and I'm so sorry that I can't speak Portuguese yet.
It's okay.
In time.
Yeah. So thank you, Michael. And now we continue with our programmation of the event. Continuamos a programação às 3h30 com as comunicações orais e à noite apresentações artísticas. So, thank you once more and
thank you, Bibiana. Obrigado. Boas tardes.